afternoon session of the 50th IPA Convention and Exhibition 2026. Following today's discussions on energy resilience, transition, and strategic partnership, we will now continue with our milestone vision to shape the next era of energy partnership. We now commence a very important segment today. In this special unified session, we will witness the signing of 4 strategic agreements and memorandum of understanding altogether. And to execute all 4 agreements, we are honored to invite all of our distinguished signatories to the stage together. Please welcome the signatories following these agreements. Amendment HOA CCS Asri Basin with PT Pertamina Hulu Energi and ExxonMobil. MOU development of CCUS technology in the upstream oil and gas working area within Pertamina with PT Pertamina Persero, PT Pertamina Hulu Energi and Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia area. MOU PT Pertamina Persero Area Research Collaboration and Joint Study on the Development of Sustainable Energy Transition Pathways. JSA between PT Pertamina Persero, PT Pertamina Hulu Energi, PT PGN Persero Tbk, and PT Pupuk Indonesia Persero on a carbon capture and storage CCS technology study to support low carbon ammonia development. And to witness, we are honored to invite VP Business Support SKK Migas Bapak Firera. Silakan Bapak untuk bergabung menyaksikan. Terima kasih. Ladies and gentlemen, all parties are now in position. We shall commence the signing process. Please sign the document. Kami persilakan, gentlemen, untuk menandatangani. Silakan untuk ditandatangani. Kita berikan applause Bapak dan Ibu. Please give them a round of applause. We will now have a photo session after the signing process. Baik, kita akan melakukan sesi foto bersama. We will now have a photo session. Please hold up your documents and show it to the camera in 3, 2, 1. Once again in 3, 2, 1. Another historic milestone, capture for Indonesia's clean energy future. Thank you. Thank you very much all signatories, ladies and gentlemen. You may now return to your seat. Thank you. Kami ucapkan terima kasih kepada seluruh pihak yang telah menandatangani dokumen. Kami persilakan untuk dapat kembali ke tempat. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the signing session of the 50th IPA Convention and Exhibition 2026. Thank you for your attention and participation. In just a few moments, we will continue with Plenary Session 2, Energy Transition at the Crossroads, Urgency, Reality, and the Road Ahead. We kindly invite all participants to remain seated as the session will begin shortly. Ladies and gentlemen, as we continue to the next plenary session, we will focus on energy transition at the crossroad, urgency, reality, and the road ahead. As the world moves toward a lower carbon future, the energy industry is faced with a critical question. How do we balance the urgency of energy transition with the reality of growing energy demand, economic development, and energy security? This session will explore the challenge, opportunities, and strategic pathway in navigating a realistic, inclusive and sustainable energy transition across the global energy landscape. Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin today's discussion, please direct your attention to the main screen for the opening video.
Energy transition at the crossroads, urgency, reality, and the road ahead. Transisi energi global saat ini berada di persimpangan jalan antara upaya dekarbonisasi dan realitas peningkatan kebutuhan energi. Menurut International Energy Agency, investasi energi bersih global diperkirakan mencapai 2,2 triliun dolar AS pada 2025. Sementara investasi migas di tahun yang sama sebesar 900 miliar dolar AS masih terjadi kenaikan dibandingkan tahun 2020 yang sebesar 784 miliar dolar AS. Dengan kata lain, ketika dunia sedang berinvestasi di sektor energi bersih, di saat yang sama, minyak dan gas bumi masih sangat dibutuhkan. Namun dinamika global terus berkembang dengan cepat. Terbaru, Amerika Serikat melakukan penyesuaian arah kebijakan energinya dengan meningkatkan fokus pada energi fosil dan menyesuaikan dukungan terhadap energi terbarukan. Meskipun terjadi perubahan kebijakan energi di tingkat global, negara-negara di Asia Pasifik tetap menunjukkan komitmen kuat terhadap agenda dekarbonisasi. Jepang dan Korea terus mendorong pengembangan ekosistem hidrogen dan amonia. Sementara Singapura melakukan penguatan kebijakan karbon. Di sisi lain, Indonesia memantapkan perannya sebagai pusat penangkapan dan penyimpanan karbon regional. Selain itu, pemerintah Indonesia telah mengajukan dokumen komitmen iklim tahap kedua atau Second NDC dengan peta jalan yang lebih ambisius untuk periode 2031-2035. Meskipun energi bersih terus menunjukkan kemajuan, data juga memperlihatkan bahwa energi fosil masih memegang peranan penting. Di Asia Tenggara, hampir 80% pasokan energi masih berasal dari sumber fosil. Oleh sebab itu, proses transisi energi memerlukan pendekatan yang pragmatis, yakni memastikan ketersediaan energi fosil sembari mendorong pengembangan energi terbarukan.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was the opening video for our plenary session this afternoon, which will bring context to our discussion. Before we dive deep into the session, we would like also to remind all participants that the interactive Q&A session is available through the QR code display on the screen. Bapak Ibu yang ingin mengajukan pertanyaan silakan untuk dapat melakukan scan pada QR yang ada di layar. And to moderate this important discussion, we are honored to welcome a director at S&P Global Energy with more than 15 years of experience in upstream energy policy, regulatory risk, and low carbon research, leading global analysis on energy transition and emission reduction strategies for the oil and gas industry. Please welcome Ms. Rachel Calvert.
Okay, thank you for the very kind introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, selamat siang. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. It is my great pleasure to be moderating this important topic on energy transition at the crossroads, urgency, reality, and the road ahead. The global energy transition has indeed entered a critical juncture. We're in a period of rebalancing, of identifying fit-for-purpose strategies to advance both energy security and climate objectives. S&P Global has long focused on energy transitions rather than a singular energy transition, recognizing that pragmatic pathways forward will vary by region and by country. In this context, our panel today is going to discuss how government and company strategies are evolving to advance balanced transitions, transitions that maintain energy security, that encourage investment, and that deliver decarbonization. To help me discuss this very important topic, I would like to invite our distinguished panelists to the stage one by one. I'll start first with Mr. Hiroyuki Mori, who has been with the Japan organization. Mr. Mori-san, please. He's been with the Japan Organization of Metals and Energy Security for over 30 years. He's currently serving as an executive vice president and a member of the board at JOGMEC, and he's focused on advancing energy transition, decarbonization initiatives. Mori-san, thank you. Next, I'd like to invite Mr. Puah Keong, Chief Executive of the Singapore Energy Markets Authority. Energy Markets Authority is focused on supporting energy security, market competition, and low-carbon initiatives in Singapore. Mr. Puah was formerly Deputy Secretary of Policy at the Ministry of Home Affairs and has also held roles with the Ministries of Trade and Industry, Finance, and Health. Thank you, Mr. Puah. Next, please welcome Dr. Lee Junseong. He's Director of the Office of CCUS and Emerging Technologies at the Korea Institute of Technology Development, Evaluation, and Planning. Dr. Lee has over 15 years' experience in national R&D planning, implementation, and funding. Next, please welcome Dr. Eniya Listiani Dewi, Director General of New and Renewable Resources and Energy Conservation at Indonesia's Ministry of Energy and Environmental Resources. She is working on efforts to advance Indonesia's sustainable future through renewable energies and electric vehicles, and is a director at the International Association of Hydrogen. Next, please help me welcome Mr. Yuzaini Mohammed Yusof, a seasoned PETRONAS leader with over 20 years of upstream experience. Yuzaini is currently President Director and Country Chairman of PETRONAS in Indonesia and has formerly served as the President of the IPA. He brings a lot of operational and commercial insight to our energy transition agenda. Next, let's please welcome Mr. Adnan Fateem, Chief Operating Officer of Mubadala Energy. Mr. Fateem has over 20 years of experience in the energy sector, and he's held multiple senior positions at Mubadala, including Director of Exploration, where he oversaw major E&P activity in Southeast Asia, and also SVP of Operations, where he oversaw the company's digital transformation. And finally, last but not least, we have Mr. Daniel Fletcher, Head of CCUS for BP, joining us on the screen. He's responsible for BP's CCUS businesses development globally and has held multiple technical, commercial, and leadership roles across the energy value chain over 20 years. So please help me welcome this very distinguished panel today. All right, to commence our discussion, I'd like to invite each of our panelists to share a few thoughts on our important topic of energy transition at the Crossroads. Mori-san, we'll start with you, please.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your kind introduction. So I'm Hiroyuki Mori from JOGMEC, Tokyo. And so ladies and gentlemen, and so thank you very much for your coming. And so I'm very honored to be here to have some comments, but I'm getting nervous now. By the way, so today, as Rachel correctly mentioned, so energy at the crossroad, but I don't think it's kind of a recession, slowdown or retreat. And its transition is actually itself as a kind of turning point. So where we should rethink about what is energy transition. So in today's world, investment in clean energy continues to expand. At the same time, however, investment in oil and gas also continues. This is not contradiction. It is because of the world is facing not only the challenge of climate change, but also the uncertainty of the energy supply. The world is now being asked to think about and to put into practice how energy transition and energy security can be achieved together. The challenges facing in the energy transition today are very similar across the world, have seen very similar across the world. So while renewable energy such as solar and wind power, so far in Europe, if you are renewable energy, got succeed. However, the low carbon fuels and hydrogen CCS have not yet fully emerged, even though the technologies themselves already exist. The problem is not technology itself. The problem is that supply, demand, regulation, and finance were not designed to develop at the same time. I believe this is a fundamental challenge of the energy transition today. Oh, by the way, I have written an article which is energy transition at the turning points. So if you are interested in, please check with the QR code, by the way. So let me continue. To address this kind of substantial challenge for CCS and hydrogen, we need to consider the energy transition together with energy security. And looking at the current international situation, looking at the Middle East, Ukraine, and so forth, this is quite clear. In this context, the energy transition is no longer only an environmental policy, it can become part of strategy to diversify the primary energy mix. I believe that key to achieving both energy security and energy transition is diversification and time horizon. At this turning point, Japan, my country, needs to address both energy security and energy transition in parallel. In the short to medium term, diversification means diversifying energy supply sources. This includes diversifying procurement sources and combining them with energy stockpiling in order to reduce dependence on specific regions. For Japan, diversification also means utilizing fossil fuels, including LNG, in a lower carbon manner by combining them with methane emission reduction, efficiency improvement, and CCUS. This is a realistic first step towards achieving both energy security and decarbonization. In the medium to long term, it will be necessary to diversify energy sources themselves and avoid dependence on a single energy system, such as fossil fuels. At this stage, decarbonization is important, not only as a means of energy transition, but also as means of energy security, I think. For example, green hydrogen is one of the central options. However, we must overcome the challenges that supply and demand do not emerge simultaneously. Therefore, Japan has started initiatives to develop supply, demand, and investment at the same time through support measures such as price gap support scheme introduced last year. I believe this is the first step towards a future industrialization. Japan also believes that diversification of Japan's primary energy sources should be achieved working together with energy transition of Southeast Asia, including Indonesia as a whole through our ASIC initiatives. The organization which work for JOGMEC is a public institution to implement energy policy led by our METI, Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry. So as a catalyst between energy policy and private sector, JOGMEC would like to put these ideas into practice. And so JOGMEC works not only with Japanese companies, but also with governments and companies across the Asia-Pacific region. By combining finance, technical, and intelligence services, we support regional energy security and energy transition. Our support means many ranges from short-term, medium-term support for fossil fuel procurement to long-term support for hydrogen projects. By the way, Indonesia is an extremely important country for energy transition in Asia, and JOGMEC is promoting initiatives that can deliver concrete results, particularly in the short to medium term. So let me give you some examples. First, support for methane emission reduction. Through the clean initiatives, which support LNG buyers, JOGMEC provides intelligent support with regard to methane emission reduction across LNG value chain. At the same time, JOGMEC provides technical support for methane measurement to suppliers such as Pertamina. This is an approach to achieve measurable and immediate emission reduction within the existing energy sector. And JOGMEC also provides technical support for CCS and CCUS. At the Scoati oil field, operated by Pertamina, and JOGMEC and the Japanese company, and JAPEX, are providing technical support towards the commercialization of the CO2 EOR project. While utilizing existing energy systems, we steadily accumulate measurable emission reductions. JOGMEC would like to continue contribute to such realistic transitions and try to contribute to energy in Southeastern Asia countries. And realism is not retreat. Japan will continue to advance realistic and sustainable transitions together with partners in Asia-Pacific region. Thank you very much.
Keong, over to you, please.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. Excellencies, distinguished guests, a very good afternoon. I am delighted to be here at the 50th Indonesian Petroleum Association Convention and Exhibition. My name is Keong. I am the Chief Executive of the Energy Market Authority of Singapore. And the role of the EMA is to regulate the electricity and natural gas market in Singapore. I believe the focus of today's panel discussions will resonate very closely with many of us in both on the panel as well as the audience. Many countries in this region have set for ourselves a net zero target for the year 2050 or 2060. Reaching net zero is not easy for any country. And for the case of Singapore, it's particularly difficult because of how small we are and how lack of natural resources Singapore is. So I will share three key points on this topic of the energy transition in terms of the urgency, the importance of it, reality, where we are now, the difficulties, and the road ahead, what are the things that we need to do to try to get there together. First point I would say is that I think even amidst the transition to a low-carbon future, oil and gas will continue to play an important role. And in Singapore's case, the role of natural gas is particularly important. We don't see it as just a transitional fuel, it's also the cornerstone of Singapore's energy security and sustainability. Due to the small size of Singapore and the lack of our own energy resources, we are actually very dependent on natural gas, imported natural gas for our power generation. 95% of Singapore's electricity is generated through natural gas imported from the pipelines from Malaysia, Indonesia, as well as in the form of LNG. Natural gas is also a very important energy source for ASEAN. It powers at least 40% of electricity generation in half of this region's countries, according to the ASEAN Center for Energy. And natural gas ensures that even as we integrate increasing amounts of renewable energy into our grids, that the electricity systems remain reliable. As the International Energy Agency notes in its recent gas market reports, gas-fired power plants are a practical way to respond to both seasonal as well as short-term demand fluctuations. In the case of Singapore, we are strengthening our energy security with two key initiatives. First, we have established Singapore Gasco. This is a government-owned company that centralizes the procurement of natural gas for the power sector. As well, we are developing a second LNG terminal, and this will help us increase our LNG capacity to meet growing energy demand. So that was my first point in terms of the key role that oil and gas will continue to play even in the energy transition. Second point, it's important for all countries and the region to continue to invest in our electricity grid. The IEA estimates that energy demand across Southeast Asia is set to double by 2050, a doubling of the energy demand in the next 25 years. And this will happen as economies push into higher value add, more energy intensive industries. Yet the grid in this part of the world remains largely fragmented. A big part of it is because the archipelagic nature of Southeast Asia makes it much more difficult to interconnect our grids compared to, say, continental Europe. And this lack of integration in our grids also leave countries exposed to supply shocks that we are witnessing today. The good news for Southeast Asia is that this is a region that has abundant renewable energy resources. Southeast Asia has renewable energy potential that stands at 20 terawatts, and that is roughly 55 times the region's present power generation capacity. Renewable energy is also increasingly cost competitive. According to the International Renewable Energy Association, the total installed cost of renewable energy has declined by 87% for solar PV and by 55%, halving it for onshore wind. And battery storage costs have also fell even more sharply by about 90%. And these reductions in the cost of renewable energy and storage is an important asset because it can support the decarbonization efforts of the countries in this region. However, the investments in renewable energy can only be realized if we are able to transform and invest in our grids collectively in order to bring power where there's abundant renewable energy to where the centers of demand are. The ASEAN Power Grid, when realized, will bring many benefits in enhancing energy security and resilience for Southeast Asia. And through these cross-border interconnections, countries in this region can share our diverse renewable energy resources and also help each other to maintain reliable supply and reducing the region's dependency on imported fuels and exposure to fuel price volatility. So that's my second point on the importance of investing in our grids collectively. The third point I would say that's important for the energy transition is the need to invest in technology, the need to leverage technology to manage grid resiliency. The grids must become smarter, more flexible, and capable of handling the variety of renewable energy and other energy sources at scale. Energy technologies must mature and must be deployed rapidly, such as from AI-driven forecasting to real-time demand management solutions. And the need to balance energy security with reliability and sustainability will be a crucial challenge for many of us, many countries here, not just today, but also going forward. The energy systems of tomorrow will not just be built by a single country, company, or institutions. And it's important for us to deepen cross-border and cross-sectoral collaboration to build the energy systems of tomorrow. So I look forward to a fruitful exchange with my fellow panelists and also in sharing Singapore's perspective on the energy transition. Thank you very much.
Distinguished moderator and fellow speakers, and ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is a great honor to join this plenary session on behalf of the Republic of Korea. My name is Junseong, and I head CCUS division at KETEP, National R&D Funding Agency. Today, I will briefly share Korea's perspective on energy transition. First, the direction of Korea's energy transition. Second, CCUS role in reducing emissions from hard-to-abate sectors. Third, recent developments in Korea's CCUS policy frameworks. Korea has committed to achieving carbon neutrality by 2050. And it is implementing climate policies in line with its nationally determined commitment, NDC. Under Korea's 2035 NDC, the government aims to further reduce greenhouse gas emissions from through renewable energy expansion and energy efficiency improvements and technology innovation. In the power sector, renewable energy deployment is expected to continue expanding, while coal-fired power plants will gradually decline over time. But at the same time, Korea recognized that some emissions remain difficult to reduce through renewable energy expansion or electrification. Especially hard-to-abate sectors, such as cement, refining, or certain high-temperature industrial process. For example, some industrial process emissions cannot be fully eliminated through fuel switching or electrification. So in this context, there's some data, but I will skip it that. From Korea's perspective, this is where CCUS may play an important role. That's very important. We do not see CCUS as a substitute for renewable energy expansion. Rather, we see CCUS as one of practical mitigation options to reduce emissions from hard-to-abate sectors. In particular, we believe CCUS role may continue to evolve alongside with technology evaluation and kind of cooperation. Accordingly, Korea believes Korea's current approach to CCUS is focused on practical and step-by-step implementation. In terms of policy developments in CCUS, Korea has recently established an initial legal and institutional foundation for CCUS. The CCUS Act was enacted in 2024, and related CCUS enforcement decree entered into force in 2025. And the government is continuing to develop more detailed implementation frameworks and policy measures in stages. In stages is very important. At this stage, the government's efforts to CCUS is focused on several practical areas. These include securing potential storage sites, advancing CCUS technologies, and supporting demonstration and commercialization efforts and promoting international cooperation. We believe international cooperation will become increasingly important in the CCUS field, especially in Asia, where industrial demand and infrastructure requirements and geological conditions vary across the country. In this regard, we highly value ongoing dialogue and cooperation with regional countries, including Indonesia. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you so much. So my name is Eniya Listiani Dewi. You can call me Eniya. I'm the Director General for New and Renewable Energy. And well, talking about the energy transition, especially for Indonesia, we are now facing to the situation of the geopolitical stream that we are now having so much adjustment in the energy policy in Indonesia. I think my minister already said in this morning and yesterday, and then we now have a big impact to Indonesia, but we are still on the position of resilience. So we all have an energy security index, which is, if we say the number 6.7, it is in the middle of the resilience, and we now having a many strategy to get the to facing this situation. There is many initiative that we now goes with our government. There is initiative to increase the renewable energy mix in the pipeline of the grid, and also in the transportation sector, and also in the another sector of the society. So we have strengthening our regulation to make it easy investment, easy business, and there is no more long regulation and permission. And we now also have review the National Electricity Program, which is already launched last year. And on the National Electricity Program, there is 70% of renewable energy is planning on the grid. So this is a huge topic. And now an additional president direction is want to go to achieve 100 gigawatt of solar power within the 3 years. So we now quickly arrange all of the national electricity planning as well to match this requirement. And we are also have several issues on the rural area. There is so much island, and we have so much diesel uses in the eastern part of Indonesia. So the big part of the 100 gigawatt solar power program is how to reduce the using of the diesel in eastern part. If we say the diesel uses, there is more than $1 per kilowatt hour can be addressed in several locations in our nation, in Indonesia. So the rural electrification would be our priority. Until 2029, we must give 100% access of the electricity to the people. So the other one, on the transportation sector, we achieved that we want to use our all local production of diesel. So we will have no import again from another country to use the diesel, but we produce by ourselves. And the other things that we do is to increase the mandatory of biodiesel. So now ongoing is 40%, and the next July we will increase it until 50%. So we can reach the situation that we have no longer imported the diesel oil again. And the other one, in July also, we will have 5% of mandatory of ethanol, but it's just several locations because we classified the supply. It should be from national. So we want to increase our self-resilience to using the natural resources like molasses from sugarcane, and also one factory can supply the bioethanol that come from corn, and the other things would be goes maybe next year is from cassava and so on. So we're trying to make our natural resources to be on the market, especially for the transportation. And again, to increase the demand of the electricity, we running on the conversion of EV, and we want to apply the electric stove more aggressively to replace the LPG uses in the household especially. And the other things is the energy efficiency also be a good part that we can reduce our emission. So if we're talking about the roadmap of net zero emission, Indonesia want to strict on our commitment that in 2060 we will achieve net zero emission. And regarding to those emissions that we must reduce, we are calculated the peak emission would be on the next 6 years, maybe in 2030 or 2035. But addressing to how to reduce this emission, we combine with the high carbon value and the low carbon energy, which is we can use gases and from natural gas, or even we have a lot of biogas at here. And we now, the interesting things in the market now, we can create the biomethane. So the biomethane now, a big demand is increasing because the carbon issues in the market, now they want to create more lower emission. And we have a lot of waste from CPO, from palm industry, so we can create it biomethane easily. And within this low carbon area, which is to be predicted from 2030 until 2045, we will use also, the first thing is the nuclear power plant, which is in the planning. And of course, the using of the lower carbon gas like ammonia and the hydrogen also have been initiated in several years ago. And now in the government also, we try to make the KPI of our MEMR is how to create more green hydrogen in this, even in this year, we have 200 tons per year of the target how that we can create the green hydrogen. And several companies like PLN, Pertamina now doing to do the initiative project to create the hydrogen and ammonia uses, even in the grid. So we try also co-firing of ammonia and hydrogen on the grid. And the other things is we are also have a good progress for the biofuel, especially also for aviation. So I heard that Singapore already start the 1% of bioafter mandatory. So we will also want to reach the bioafter. because we have a lot of natural resources, and now Pertamina also collecting used cooking oil and produce the bioethanol, and will be mandatory soon. And well, the other one is how we can mix the renewable energy on the grid. Now, I mentioned about the National Electricity Program. It contains 70% of renewable energy. So in our national potential, we got exactly 3.6 terawatt, not only gigawatt. If we say a gigawatt, there is a 3,687 gigawatt of potential, which is, if we separate it to the islands, we can see the number on the map. So regarding to the national renewable energy mix, now we are reaching in the position of 17th. So this is want to be increased again. With 100 gigawatt project, maybe we want to fastening our commitment. And of course, the international collaboration and the private sector, the investment from private sector is addressing to be a huge, but we're calling for 100 more billion US dollar of investment. And I think the 70% is from IPP, so the private sectors would be joining in this a big program. So yeah, regarding to our commitment that we now also pushing the investment on the geothermal and hydropower. So we have several projects that now going online bidding. So it is internationally announced, and we want to achieve more baseload electricity on the grid, like geothermal and the hydropower. So maybe I will stop on that one. But the last things, I want to show you the slide that we are now rushing on the road test of biodiesel. So this is really a good example. This is the first in the world. There is no country that using 50% of biodiesel and to blend it to the diesel. So we now have a road test in 6 sectors: automotive, agriculture, machinery equipment, maritime transport, and also heavy mining equipment, train, and also power plant. And for the good things, good news is IMO, International Maritime Organization, now accept this biodiesel to be a tool that we can reduce the emission. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yuzaini.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for the organizer, IPA, for the opportunity for me to be alongside with all the distinguished fellow colleagues and panels. Looking forward for a good discussion. I think we have seen 4 speakers talking about the energy transition from the perspective of the countries. And I think at the left side of the panels is on the operator side. We are the one that moving it forward together with the government in order to make it happen. So PETRONAS, the slides please. PETRONAS as a national oil company, we carry a dual responsibility in terms of supporting the energy security and of course delivering the responsible energy solution for the world. So wherever we are operating, whether in Malaysia, where we started our operation, and also area where we are operated around the world. So it's very important, for us to be responsive and also respond to this growing energy needs and demand, especially in Asia, where fossil fuel continue to be account in the energy mix. In response to this challenge, I think PETRONAS remain committed to focus on transition to a lower carbon future, which we translated into a, please, next slide, please. Where we translate our commitment on energy transition, what we call PETRONAS Energy Transition Strategy. It comprised with the three pillars, core business, new business, and also the net zero. So when we talk about core business, I think it's very simplified. For PETRONAS, we divided into three main core functions: upstream business, downstream, and also gas and maritime business. So we aim to serve the growing needs of energy and solution, where I think that now we are evolution in terms of how we deliver the energy. We call it energy superstore. So it comprises all the business, and we serve the support that is needed for any solution that is needed. So as we can see, our portfolios today, the energy mix for PETRONAS around 2/3 of gas heavy, which put us actually in an advantage position to thrive in the energy transition world through LNG. I think in our financial report back in 2025, we delivered strong performance in all the area. We're in total production of 2.4 million barrel equivalent of oil and gas in upstream business. So we also reinforce our position in LNG supplier globally. So we delivered about 36 million metric ton of gross LNG. And we also demonstrate our resilience in our integrated value chain. Deliver about 209 million barrel of petroleum products, alongside with about 10.5 million metric tons of chemical products in our downstream business. So for PETRONAS, the new business, we identified as 6 new businesses to pursue. I think this will attract attention from Ibu Eniya. We'll look into specialty chemicals, bio-based solution, CCS as a service, renewable energies, hydrogen, and of course, green mobility throughout some of our subsidiary, namely like Gentari and a few other companies that we acquired around the world. Through Gentari, our clean energy solution, we continue to make meaningful progress in terms of renewable, green mobility, and hydrogen. So these are our focus area in the new business that we are looking at. The third pillar is, of course, the net zero, as mentioned from our colleague just now. So for PETRONAS, our pathway to zero carbon emission is in 2050. That's our commitment. So we have our short, mid-term, and also long-term reduction target. So we are proud to share that cumulatively since 2012, when we recorded our emission target, we have reduced over 21 million tons of GHG emission from our operation and successfully met the near-term GHG emission target. So 2024 alone, I think we recorded emission of 46.5 million tons of equivalent CO2 metric ton equivalent for our Malaysia operation, 6% lower from what we targeted of 49.5. So our methane emission also reduced by 72%, surpassing our target of 50% reduction. So that shows that when we put our target in, we will continue to deliver. We're looking at all the initiatives that we have through our cooperation, collaboration, and also initiative that we have together with our partners to reduce the emission target as our plan of this net zero carbon emission. So how do we support this ambition, the energy transition strategy? So for me and my team in Indonesia, next please. So we have been in Indonesia presently for over 2 decades, since 2000. We are in integrated portfolio business across upstream and downstream. And in upstream, we are having our 11 PSC. Alhamdulillah, so far we have been growing constantly over the years. So we have 5 blocks where we operated and also in participating interest in the 6 other blocks. So our operation right now is growing, and on downstream segment as well, we have our PCM, Kimia, and also lubricant business, where we deliver high performance lubricant around 15 distribution channel nationwide, and of course tradings all the petrochemicals that's supporting the industry, like mentioned by Ibu just now on the E50 initiative, where we provide the methanol, some and fame in order to support the biodiesel initiative for Indonesia. And in Indonesia, in terms of our energy transition, we have implemented a lot of our GHG emission reduction target. So whatever that we put in our strategy in terms of the initiative of reducing GHG emission, in Indonesia we have a lot of initiatives. For example, in our operation in Surabaya, in Gresik, we install solar panel to reduce the emission and of course reducing the cost for electricity. Deployment of vapor recovery unit. So this is a design by capturing gas, from our gas compressors and of course from our line and put it back in the system. And it looks like a simple adjustment to our system, but it has significantly reduced our emission on the CO2. So far we have reduced about 12,000 tons of CO2 emission annually. And at the same time, we improved the reliability of our equipment and also recovered additional condensate that have a commercial value. In parallel, other than reducing our carbon footprint in the operation, we also participated in a biodiversity initiative, in where we are operating in Madura and also in Gresik. We have initiative on artificial coral reef, mangrove restoration and tree planting initiative around where we are operating. And of course, as part of our social impact and sustainability initiative, we have 3 key points or focus area on powering knowledge, uplifting life, and also planting for tomorrow. So delivering long-term positive impact to local community. So our forward-looking plan is strategically reposition our portfolio towards a more gas-weighted production mix. I think throughout the target that we have for the next 5 to 10 years, we are transitioning from what we have right now, the portfolio about 50-50 oil and gas, to a more gas-driven, 25 oil and 75% of gas in 2035. That shows from our portfolio, where we focus on more gas play. If you look at, while we are focusing on the first oil that will go on Hidayah asset that will be, inshallah, producing by early of next year, 2027. We also participating together with our partner, Medco, to deliver the Saka Kemang gas to the pipeline in Sumatra, which we hope we can supply to Singapore, or of course for the domestic market in Sumatra. And of course our Bukit Panjang project for Ketapang PSC, where we are delivering about 50 to 60 million scarf for the energy requirement of the gas plant and of course the chemical plant around Gresik and Surabaya area. So that is our commitment in terms of pushing forward more production while looking at energy transition in Indonesia. And of course, as what we signed yesterday, our commitment to commit to the project, to FID Masela project, we signed the HOA and key term for our with our LNG buyer, and of course the LNG development and marketing agreement. So that show a clear plan for us to move forward the Masela project towards that target by FID by next year or early of or end of this year, and of course by the end of the decade we will have first LNG drop for Masela. That's our commitment, PETRONAS together with our partners, with our operator Inpex and of course Pertamina, in order to support the energy security for the country. Next, please. So in terms of when we talk about how does we have the strategy and where we want to operate. Like Indonesia is very important for us, is our heartland or a growth country. So as mentioned by Ibu Eniya, government has a lot of supports on all the regulation policy that is set in place on this energy transition. So we are riding on it. We work together with the government, with our stakeholder, in order to achieve the target, whether it's Indonesia energy transition target or PETRONAS energy our target. So in terms of the target, we cannot generalize everything because it have to be looking at the region by region. So where we operate in Indonesia, we understand there's no one size fits all in order to go for energy transition. So for Indonesia, for example, right, the context is fundamentally different if you look at maybe from Europe perspective or the Far East perspective. There's still communities is having limited access to reliable energy. As mentioned from previous speaker, they are still in the eastern Indonesia still using diesels. There's no electricity at all. So these are the things that we need to be understand when we operate in the country. Naturally, we need to have a different approach, prioritizing energy security and of course affordability. This is very important, and while progressively we will reduce emission. So in terms of the policy, we have so many policy that is already approved and also currently being pursued, nationally determined contribution. We have the energy transition roadmap, national energy policy, carbon capture storage framework, and of course the carbon tax implementation and carbon economic value. So all this policy will support. So this is going to be considered like a certainty for any operator when they move forward and deliver their promise to the country. Last but not least, when you talk about the energy security versus decarbonization, we need to be balanced. It's not easy to reduce the coal and oil use, and we have to be balanced against reliable energy supply. So we need to have a clear position on natural gas as transition fuel, and PETRONAS believe that gas and LNG is the way forward. I think yesterday our Bapak Minister mentioned about there is a need of energy, especially gas, in the future, and he gave the promise going forward, with all the projects coming in, for example, for Masela, for Andaman that Mubadala is working on, and ENI and the Kuteh Basin. This is all a gas-prone project, and there's a promise by the country that all this will be used for the energy mix for the future. So this is something that gives certainty for the investor, and we are looking forward to more working with the government in order to pursue and accelerate all these gas projects and LNG project in the future. In terms of regulatory and policy alignment, I think we have a good implementation, but it still required better alignment across ministry, in terms of what is the framework that we have, alignment between the ministry and between the policy and carbon pricing mechanism. This is something that we need to work together as an industry between the operators and the government in order to make it work. So all in all, I think collaboration between government and the industry is essential in order to successfully navigate this energy transition. I think we hear from each of the country that this is a need, there's a target, whether it's 2050, 2060, so we need to work together. And the right balance between energy security, affordability, and sustainability is very important. This is crucial, and having a right policy support, transparency, partnership in the industry player, and of course, this could advance the Indonesia national energy transition objective. And PETRONAS is here to work together with the government in order to make it happen. Thank you.
Okay.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Salamat Siang. You have said it all, but I will try really to look to the topic from a different angle. Maybe I will speak more about the challenges that we are facing from energy security and energy transition. We meet at a moment defined by tension between ambition and practicality, between long-term objectives and short-term needs, and increasingly between energy security and energy transition. But this is not a moment of contradiction. It is a moment of convergence. The way I see this, energy security and energy transition, they are not opposing forces. They are deeply interrelated and mutually reinforcing. I think everyone are aware of the current recent global events which have made this very clear. The disruption of flows through the Strait of Hormuz has sent a stark reminder to markets and also to policymakers that energy systems remain exposed to geopolitical shocks. Supply chains can be strained overnight, prices can spike. Currently, we are talking about $105. Last year, the same month, average Brent was 65. Very volatile market. We are talking here about 10% of global oil supply and about 20% of global LNG. In addition, disrupting the export infrastructures, again, which is driving the Brent prices, to very high sides. And energy security, something that many assumed was stable, can no longer be taken for granted. But the urgency of the energy transition has not diminished. I think we have heard a very good, activities and initiatives and the resistance from the companies and the countries to pursue their energy transition. Because it's important and it improves the stability of energy supply, lowers the risk of price shocks, and diversifies energy sources and creates more resilient energy system. But very important, we need to know that the transition will not happen overnight and is not going to happen in a straight line. Across this region, and especially here in Indonesia, energy demand continues to grow rapidly. According to market analysts, during the last 10 years, energy demand in the region has increased by over 35%, and the energy demand, electricity demand, has increased over 60%. And despite the recent supply shocks that we are experiencing, this trajectory sees no signs changing due to economic expansion, industrialization, urbanization, and also the rising living standards. But Indonesia energy landscape is unique from our perspective. It has diverse infrastructure challenges and a growing population and a strong reliance on domestic resources and diversifications. The country is pursuing an ambitious energy transition agenda, while at the same time ensuring that growth is not constrained. This dual imperative, growth and decarbonization, is not easy to manage, but it is fundamental. And this is where natural gas plays a critical role. Market analysts Wood Mackenzie predicting that natural gas was set to become a cornerstone of Southeast Asia's energy future, projected to account for up to 30% of the energy region's primary mix by 2050, largely because it can support economic growth, energy security, and the transition away from the carbon-intensive fuels. I think it's important to frame the role of gas. It is not the final destination of the energy transition for sure, but it is an essential enabler in the transition journey. At Mubadala Energy, we see gas as a cornerstone of responsible energy transition, particularly in regions like Southeast Asia, and we do not see the recent volatility as changing this long-term trajectory. At Mubadala Energy, we are very active here in Indonesia, and our recent activities reflect this commitment. In the Andaman Sea, we have made significant discovery, and we have put a lot of efforts, managed and successfully discovered 3 main discoveries. We are talking about a multi-TCF discoveries. Currently, the team are aggressively pursuing and advancing the development of one of the discovered resources. Hopefully, in coming few weeks, maximum months, we will announce the FID of one of our discovered resources, Tankulu. And this is only a phase 1 development of the entire Andaman story. We have also second phase and also third phase. So we have a greater plan really for in Indonesia over here. And yesterday also, we have announced we acquired Andaman Southwest. So we are very happy also, with this addition. In total now, we are talking about 5 blocks in the Andaman and Mubadala Energy. I'm happy to say that we are the largest net equity holder of the entire Andaman. And this cannot be achieved really without the support of the government and also alignment on the strategic value that we will bring to the country and to the shareholders. So these investments are guided by a simple principle that energy transition must be grounded in reality. And reality tells us 3 main things. First, demand is growing and it must be met responsibly, and gas will play a fundamental role. Second, energy system must remain secure and resilient, especially in times of uncertainty. And third, decarbonization is not optional, it is imperative. So the question is not whether we choose energy security or energy transition. The question is how we deliver both together. For sure, this requires a lot of collaborations across the entire energy ecosystem. Governments, industry, investors, and also communities. It requires stable policy frameworks, long-term investment signals, and willingness to embrace innovation. Also, it requires a shift in the mindset. We must move away from viewing the transition as a trade-off and instead see it as an opportunity to build better, more flexible, and more sustainable energy system. But this will not happen without investment. Yesterday, I have attended one of the panels, and we have seen the comparison between the investment in the conventional energy versus the investments in the renewable. I think bottom line, investments on both sides should go hand in hand. And this to ensure transition and also sustainability at the same time. Let me close with this thought. The crossroads we face today should not be a point of hesitation. It is a point of decision. The recent supply shocks are not a reason to slow down the energy transition. They are a reason to move forward with a greater clarity and determination. Because a secure energy system that is not sustainable will not endure. And a sustainable energy system that is not secure will not succeed. Our task together is to ensure that we build systems that deliver both energy transition and energy security. Thank you very much.
And last but not least, Daniel.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Firstly, apologies that I couldn't be there in person this year, but it's great to have the opportunity to share with you some of BP's experience in navigating the energy transition. And as we've heard from many of the other panelists, we're at a complex time in history. The world continues to require more energy to improve lives and meet the growing needs of billions of people. For example, almost 1 billion people still don't have access to electricity. The challenge is how to deliver that energy growth with lower emissions. And this is something that BP is in action on. We're delivering energy to the world today and tomorrow safely, reliably, and efficiently. We remain committed to our ambition to be net zero by 2020. Operational emissions were down by 37% compared to our 2019 baseline of 20% by 2025. Methane intensity was also down to 0.04%, and this was ahead of our 0.2% target by 2025. This was due to improved operational performance, and we continue to collaborate across industry on this. Globally, we're seeing the conversation around the energy transition mature, as we've heard from many of the other panelists. Increasingly, we're seeing a recognition of the need for an orderly and pragmatic transition, meeting growing demand and reducing emissions, not or. This balance between energy security and transition, and as the previous panelists said, a convergence of the two. In BP, we're delivering the energy the world needs today through growing our upstream, and we're investing with discipline in the energy transition. This means that where returns are competitive, we're developing oil and gas CCUS, and we see gas as a particularly important key driver of the energy transition. This is something that almost every one of the other panelists has highlighted. You know, gas emits around half the emissions of coal when burned for power, and it's a great partner to the intermittency of renewables such as wind. The world wants and needs energy that's secure and affordable as well as low carbon, and the challenge is how do we achieve that? Well, gas supports an orderly transition because it's abundant and it's lower carbon intensity than oil and coal, and it can help hard to abate industrial sectors to reduce operational emissions, and it can easily be stored and transported over long distances, as we're all familiar with. So, in BP, alongside our gas developments, we're developing CCUS, and this is a technology that we see as highly complementary that can reduce the greenhouse gas emissions associated with gas. We've got some real examples of this all around the world. It's not just an aspirational idea. We're building real CCUS projects with 3 projects representing over $15 billion of investment under construction as we speak, cluster. And we've got one here in Indonesia with Tangguh, Mubadala compression and CCUS, or Tangguh UCC. These projects will permanently store millions of tons of CO2 while also unlocking value and optionality across our gas and power businesses. In the UK, the Northern Endurance Partnership, or NEP, with access to over 1 billion tons of CO2 storage capacity, will be one of the world's largest CO2 transport and storage networks, and it's decarbonisation. Linked to that CO2 transport and storage system, we're building net zero Teesside power. That's the world's first commercial-scale gas-fired power station with carbon capture technology. And that's going to generate around 742 megawatts of flexible, dispatchable, low-carbon power. Both those projects have been structured as incorporated joint ventures, and they benefit from regulatory frameworks that provide financial support and enable competitive external financing. We've heard from many of the other panelists the importance of collaboration and being able to drive that regulatory certainty for investors. I think that's a real example where we've been able to build on that and make those investments. Together, those projects, they represent one of the largest non-recourse project financings in the UK, and they're expected to start up in 2028. I would say that the key thing in the UK we saw that enabled that was this joint development approach between emitters, industry, CO2 transport and storage operators, so the upstream, as well as government and government support to help kickstart the industry. It finally helped get over this chicken and egg conundrum of supply and demand in the CCUS industry. So to highlight what many others have said, collaboration really is key. We've directly experienced how robust commercial business models with effective management of what's known as cross-chain risk have enabled final investment decisions to be reached, including unlocking that key external financing. And then, of course, here in Indonesia, BP is immensely proud of being a key energy partner for decades. And we have a great example of pioneering and pragmatic energy development with Tangguh. Tangguh is Indonesia's largest LNG producer. It supplies energy both domestically and to the wider region. And now we're in construction on Tangguh UCC. That's a nationally strategic project which will both grow gas production and decarbonize that using CCUS. It's the country's first commercial-scale CCUS development and something we're very proud of. This is a project that will re-inject CO2 to enhance gas recovery, as well as storing that CO2 permanently in a closed-loop system. So once completed, it's going to reduce Tangguh's greenhouse gas emissions by around 40%. It makes Tangguh one of the lowest carbon intensity LNG facilities globally. Tangguh shows that CCUS can be commercially viable through a phased and pragmatic approach that builds long-term value, because we think that by integrating CCUS into upstream operations, we're creating a direct revenue stream through enhanced gas recovery that can underpin the commercial viability. And it also establishes that infrastructure for the future. With over 1.8 gigatons of potential storage capacity, Tangguh has the potential to evolve into a regional CCUS hub, accepting third-party CO2 from hard-to-abate sectors. So we can leverage that existing infrastructure from Tangguh CCUS to drive the costs down. And indeed, many of you will have seen that we're also exploring application of the JCM for Tangguh for future emissions that come into that. So there are many mechanisms commercially that we think we can expand Tangguh CCUS with, and we will be exploring all of them. To make the value chain work, we need those strong partnerships and supportive policy frameworks. And that includes the bilateral agreements on cross-border CO2 storage and transport. It includes fiscal incentives and enabling regulations. And we've seen really great progress in that across the Asian region in recent years in particular. So fundamentally, we think that the energy transition really requires this balanced approach. These projects that we're in construction on, they show that where those business models are clear and with the right opportunity that can meet an investor's returns thresholds, there are near-term opportunities that can meet both the competing demands of low-cost energy supply growth and decarbonisation. The world is looking for us to continue to provide that energy to fuel economic growth and improve lives and improve energy security, but in new ways with fewer emissions. And we will continue to collaborate with all of you to try and do that. Thank you very much.
All right, a big thank you to all of our panelists for the very interesting comments. I'd like to start with a few questions by rounding out our understanding of how government and company strategies are evolving. So I'm going to do a quick pulse check with a couple of you. Ibu Eniya, I'd be very interested to get your thoughts. When we look at Southeast Asia, where do you think we're having the most success with energy transition right now? And what's the biggest challenge? 2 very quick points.
Oh, well, about the biggest challenge in our country is about the logistic, the transmission. So in the national electricity planning, there is a focus of transmission investment and of course distribution, because we're delaying of the renewable energy deployment because of the there is no transmission that can evacuate the renewable energy to the demand. So that's the things. And another challenge is how we can move the people can use more productive sector, can use the electricity for productive sector. So it can reach more, rely on the electricity. And if we're talking about the Java Island, which is the populated one, and the biggest renewable resources in the Sumatra Island, which is different islands. And then now we are also want to connect it about the how we can transport the renewable energy from the Sumatra Island goes to the Java, because the peak is in Java, and the industrial sector also growth in Java Island. If we're talking about the gas, the natural gas, and even we can inject the biogas into the pipeline. The pipeline will, it's maybe the next year will fully connect it. And this is a good thing, because we have a lot of waste of palm oil in the Sumatra Island, which is the biggest one in the Sumatra Island. And then several companies now talking to us to how government can regulate it about the injection of the biogas at the pipeline, and even we can go more further with the biomethane and so on, or even we can export it to another country. So we are now talking about that. And there is also a specific issues regarding to how we can deliver the energy to the outside of the country, which is the nearest is the Singapore. So now we have a green industrial zone. So the sustainable industrial zone, I'm corrected. This program will be a good thing to create the productive economic growth in the inside the country, and then can deliver and connect it to the international, including the another country, to send it to other. But we can also have another benefit to increase our economic growth. So that's
Perfect.
okay.
Keong, I'd like to come to you next. We're talking about this concept of policy evolution. How have energy transition policy frameworks, in your view, changed? What has evolved? What stayed the same?
Well, I think when you ask about energy policy, there are many things that come to my mind, right? I mean, we always think about the energy trilemma. How do you balance between competitiveness, security, and sustainability? But maybe to keep my reply short, I'll just focus on one aspect of policy, and that is how do we make markets work to the advantage of facilitating the energy transition? How do you put a price on carbon? They will allow greater investments into low carbon solutions. In Singapore, we have decided to implement a carbon tax. And this year, we make a further move by increasing the carbon tax. And now it's about $34 per ton of CO2. And I think in this part of the world, we probably remain the only one that have implemented that. And trust me, it's not an easy move, right? Because it's going to hurt consumers' pockets. It's going to hurt households' pockets. It's going to increase business costs. But yet, if you don't do that, then you blunt the kind of market incentive to spur further investments into low-carbon technologies. And when we talk about the energy transition into low or even zero carbon energy resources, yes, I think there's a space for further technology improvements to bring costs down. But at least in the short to medium term, the cost of many of these low carbon solutions remain higher than conventional oil and gas and brown energy. So who is going to bear this higher cost? How do we make this higher cost be something that can be shared between, consumers, markets, businesses, governments? I think these are all not easy solutions to think about.
Thank you for that. I'd like to turn back to the other end of the stage to come back to the company perspective. Yuzaini, I'd be very interested in your thoughts on a similar question from the upstream industry. Where are we succeeding the most with regards to energy transition, and what's our biggest challenge?
Thank you, Rachel. In terms of the industry, the upstream industry, I think we have made a lot of meaningful progress, while in terms of managing emission. Well, of course, it's not even, in some industry, in some asset or the region is going to be different. But I can give a few examples where we have progress. One example that we are also looking at in our operation is, of course, operational emission reduction. The example of methane management, flare reduction, and energy efficiency initiative, and process optimization. I think that's worked very well. And I think every companies around the world, and of course here in Indonesia, because of the regulation and policy as well, we are tracking that. And we have meaningful reduction across the country, across the companies. And from my example, we've seen that policy has been made. In Indonesia alone, there's a lot of policies. And one thing that I think, Ibu Eniya, I have to salute the government of Indonesia, while it's not being done only on the one side. When the government do the policy on CCS, on NDCs, it's talking to the companies, talking to the industries. And I know that on the CCS, a lot of the companies in the IPA organization, we work together for the last couple of years to make it happen. And we got the permit and we got the purpose on CCS. That's beautiful, and that's good example. And we can see that the country also now moving away from the dirty fuel, right? Reduction of the coal usage. In terms of the energy mix, there's a set target on a reduction of the fossil fuels and more to the cleaner energy, renewables, geothermals, solar, and of course the energy transition as well, moving away from diesel and oil to gas, natural gas. That's a tremendous movement from what we've seen in the past. And of course, the industry mindset also has changed. Last time when we look into projects, we never talk about energy emission or gas emission. So now for PETRONAS as well, we have our committee when every project to FID, we need to look into energy reduction. And that should be a clear target, whether it's on the first day of operation or maybe within certain number of years, you need to reduce emission until zero. So that's aligned with our net zero carbon emission target. So that's some of the examples that I can see that the industry, upstream industry, are moving forward, and we need to work together, continue together, in order to make it progress. In terms of the challenge, well, with any policy, any regulation, any initiative, we know what is actually that the issue that we have. How to put the implementation, the action that we put on paper and into a realization. The implementation gap is something that we need to work together. We have a lot of policy that exists, but how can we move it forward? That is important. And as mentioned by Mr. Puah from Singapore, right? They have made a lot of stride in terms of putting the carbon policy. How to make sure that the economic of decarbonization really work.
So these are the things that we need to work together as an industry with the government in order to make sure that all projects, for example, what BP is doing for their Mubadala projects, like what we are going to do with Masela project, we need to have a clear target in terms of the economic. When we put in a CCS, CCUS project or policy, it will have incentive to it so that we can work on the project economically. And of course, fragmented in terms of the implementation of policy, we need to work it together in terms of government and also the investor. This is very key in order for the challenge that we need to try to solve.
Okay, thank you very much. Daniel, I'm coming to you for a similar view on evolution of strategies. What elements of company strategies do you think are staying the same? Which do you think are changing?
Thank you, Rachel. Yeah, it's a great question. I think companies remain committed to invest where the points on regulatory framework and predictability of investment, I think those are very clear. That's what then helps us have a clear view on returns thresholds and being able to bank that fundamentally. I think what we are seeing evolve is, and we've seen it kind of evolve up and down in the last kind of 6 or so years, is the proportion of investment to low carbon technology versus traditional upstream, that with energy transition. I think those strategies are evolving as the world and governments evolve their strategies. And I think that highlights this importance of collaboration, of being in lockstep with one another, not going too fast in one way when maybe a government isn't quite ready there yet. I think that's part of the reason why BP has, in recent years, we've very much focused on growing our upstream more again, and disciplined investment in the transition. So being able to take this pragmatic approach where it works, and not kind of going too far too fast. So I would say that's been a journey for many companies over the past 5 or 6 years in particular, and of course even longer than that, but particularly in recent years when we've seen some of the supply disruptions around the world, this increased recognition of the importance of energy security and a pragmatic approach. I think we're starting to see that balance, and with any investment, it's always about weighing the balance. So I would say that's probably the key thing, is that we've seen evolve, and as I say, we continue to invest in the energy transition, but we're doing it in a disciplined way where those rules of investment are clear, and that very much speaks to the importance of collaboration and regulatory maturity.
Yep, thank you very much for those comments. I'd like to turn back now to another theme that came through, I think, in a lot of the panelists' comments around a balanced energy mix and around moving energy transition and security in parallel, but there's a sequencing element to discuss here. So Adnan, I'd like to come back to you. You talked about energy security and transition as two sides of the same coin. What does that mean practically when we think about a balanced energy mix and we think about enabling investment?
Yeah, thank you. Hello? Yeah. We live in a world where energy security is a dominant policy driver, and where nations rethinking supply chains to supply chains and investing to reduce import exposure. And despite the volatility that we are experiencing nowadays, the demand is very resilient. We are, as per latest statistics and predictions, they see the oil, the liquid, is still holding above 100 million barrels a day from now till 2030. And recent reports also saying till 2040. And also the gas, we should experience, an increase of not less than 9% from now till 2030. So despite all these kind of volatilities, the demand remains there. And that's why it's very important to be very practical when it comes to energy transition. We cannot, as I said earlier, we cannot just switch to cleaner energy overnight, and it's not going to happen in a very straight line. That's why we see the gas is going to play a very fundamental role. First is less emitting source of energy, affordable, comparing, with other fossil fuels like coal, right? It's almost 50% less emissions comparing with coal. And in the region here, some of the countries, they are using coal, more than 50%, to generate their power. So there is a huge room really to use the gas and at the same time reduce the emissions. So from this angle, I think it's very important and fundamental to continue also investing in the infrastructure to make sure that we are securing affordable source of energy that support the transition journey. This is how we see the gas is playing a fundamental role. The country here, I think they are on the right track. Indonesia in particular, they have set a target to double their gas production by 2030. And at the same time, they set a net zero target 2060. We see this a very practical approach and also provide the clarity to investors and also, to communities on what's need to be pursued and also the priorities.
Perfect. Junseong, I'd like to come back to you with this concept of sequencing. You talked about electricity expansion, renewables, CCS for the Republic of Korea. How do you think about that sequencing and that balance question for your transition?
Sequencing, very difficult, right? From our perspective, renewable energy expansion and electricity remain central pillars of our decarbonization. But as I already mentioned, we clearly analyzed and find some specific emissions from hard-to-abate sectors really difficult to reduce. So we regard CCUS as one of very pragmatic mitigation options for reducing emissions from hard-to-abate sectors. That's my answers.
Thank you very much. I guess picking up a little bit on that hard-to-abate theme, but also sort of changing perspectives. Mori-san, I'd like to come back to you. You've done a lot of work on reducing methane emissions. It'd be very interesting to know if you think with the current energy security challenges, people are thinking about methane emissions more as an energy security issue, and how JOGMEC's initiatives are changing in that space.
So thank you very much for your question. It's very important. Many panelists explained that. So we will use LNG for the time for several decades more, in parallel with introducing the low carbon fuels and so forth. But of course, we have to think about future climate change problem. So under the circumstances, using LNG and so then in addition to it, and so thinking about the low carbon method, including CCS and methane emission is very important for us. And so we give importance on actually methane emission control because it is kind of effective way and practical way and easy to get the result for the time being. And so we also extend some technical service and intelligence service. And so for intelligence service, we have introduced clean initiatives. And so since 2023, that is initiatives from the buyer's side to voluntary action to try to reduce the methane emission. And so buyers asking so the suppliers for some question and request for the data about methane emission, and the JOGMEC as from the Secretary Office, and so gathering the letter and analyzing the data, and so that provides so that everybody so with the result and best practices. That is voluntary action from so our side, also the consumer side. So starting so work together with Korean Kogas and Japanese JERA, and recently so 27 so buyers participate in the project, and so more than 20 companies like so Eniya, PETRONAS, and INPEX acknowledge these initiatives. In addition to that, so we heavily so give importance on the technical assistance for methane emission detection. So we have been working with PETRONAS and Eniya for the on-site so the experiment, and try to so now so we are so now under the technology development, so now looking from the satellite to detect the methane emission. So that's so all about so we are doing for methane emission.
Thank you very much. I think moving ahead with this concept of kind of changing perspectives, changing initiatives, Keong, I'd like to come back to you. Part of the crossroads we find ourselves in at the moment is escalated by some of the geopolitical tensions going on at the moment. So if we look at the current conflict in the Middle East, do you think that's changed anything about how the world is approaching the energy transition? Is it changing anything for the Energy Markets Authority?
I think the current conflict does send a pretty strong message to policymakers not to take energy security for granted. So it does give an impetus for us to look at our energy resilience. So every country will look at what are my contingency measures? Do I have enough reserves in case there's a disruption in the supply chain? So in the short term, I think definitely has caused every country to look at what we need to do to ensure energy security. But at the same time, I think a lot of the focus still remains quite hard on the energy transition. I think we see that is going to be an important long-term priority. And in some ways, the shocks to the oil and gas markets, the high cost involved, does give countries a bigger push to look at development of alternative energy solutions that can reduce their dependency on energy imports, in particular on oil and gas. But that longer term push will take more time to materialize, but I think that the effect is quite real. In the short term, some level of recalibration and rebalancing is needed. So I think earlier, Eniya spoke about the Singapore's sustainable aviation fuels requirement, and actually we had a requirement for airlines to have 1% of the jet fuel being the SAF, and it was supposed to be implemented for air tickets to be sold from April this year, for flights departing Singapore in October this year. But in view of the Middle East crisis that led to a big jump in the jet fuel prices in March this year, the government announced that we're going to defer it. We're not going to stop it altogether, but in view of the reality of high cost, to defer it and then to postpone the implementation to later part of this year for tickets to be sold, and then only for flights leaving Singapore in January this year. So those are some of the short-term measures that we have taken to cushion the shock of the high energy prices, but we remain committed to try to pursue the longer-term transition outcomes.
Okay, thank you for that. I'd like to change gears a little bit now and focus in a bit more closely on Asia-Pacific region in a bit more detail, and Indonesia in particular. But Hiroyuki, I'll start with you. You've been involved in enabling investment in Southeast Asia for over 30 years. from your perspective, what are the things governments should be thinking about now to keep that investment flowing to support both energy security and energy transition?
Thank you very much. That's a very important question for all the Asian APAC people in the APAC. So I'd like to say the three elements are very important for us. One is the kind of predictability of the consistency in policy, so that everybody can predict the future of the project or policy itself. That will contribute to the investors like Mubadala, easy to understand the nature of the project and so forth. And second, the risk sharing between the operator and government is very important for us. In particular, the early stage or fast mover project, fast penguin project. And in particular, it's difficult for the private sector to go into the project by itself. And third one is kind of frank environment among the stakeholder to work together and discuss each other. Those are the three important elements for the government should prepare for the investors and operators. I think it's very similar to make friends.
Yuzaini, I think there's a lot of common threads there with some of the things you said. Is there anything you would add about how particular NOCs, private investors, and governments can think about cooperation?
Thank you, Rachel. I think that question has been lingering in a lot of people's mind when we are operating in a country. We have a leadership roundtable talk, right? Recently, I think yesterday. And we open up in terms of asking each other, what does it need from the government perspective, from the operators, industry perspective, in order to make it competitive and investment friendly in the country. And IPA, we have done this a lot of forums, discussion, and influencing in order for us to ensure that Indonesia will be still a country where everyone wants to invest in. And we have shared some of the studies. Yeah, I think this year we're coming up with this benchmarking, looking at how does other countries around the world try to create a more investment-friendly country or situation. And I think a lot of it has been mentioned by Mori-san. Yeah? Fiscal term and legal certainty is one of the key factors. When we look at any FIDs of our projects, the risk that is always in our mind as an investor is, will the government change any policy while we are operating in this country? For example, for the upstream industry, we sign a contract for 20, 30 years. We need the certainty so that any government change, any different minister or organization giving up initiative, it will not change any of that policy. So that gives us comfort as investor to continue to operate and also maintain the growth trajectory in the country. That's important. Another thing is, we talk about ease of doing business. This is a very key, one of the topic that is always asked during a CEO forum between the PSC contractors with SKK Migas is, please help us to ease the way we do permitting, how can we improve on approval, and sometimes when we talk about policy, we talk about one door policy, but there's so many windows. You open up one door, there's a lot of bureaucracy towards that. And that is something that if we can eliminate that or reduce that, that will eventually help us, the investor, to continue to invest and convince our shareholders, right? And just to share with you, PETRONAS and ENI, we just incorporated a new joint venture. And our role, objective for this new company, Sierra, is to grow in Malaysia and Indonesia, and we want to accelerate all the projects that we committed to the government. And we just got the approval by the government, both government of Malaysia and Indonesia. Our role, once we committed to any projects, we need to make it happen. And we have two shareholders now instead of one each, right? PETRONAS and Eni. The shareholder needs a certainty on that investment, that whenever you put a project to operationalize, it needs to be making money for the next 20, 30 years. So this is something that I think is very important to continue to help the investor in the country in order for us to continue to deliver the promises and all the projects that we want to do over here. I think it's not just coming from PETRONAS, not coming from Eni. I think we have a big project coming in from Mubadala, from BP, from Exxon, and Inpex. And we also need help in terms of easing on the permits and whatnot. I think that's very key. It looks like very simple, but if we can solve that, I think there was a lot of growth and projects coming in the country. I think that's, I just want to say that. Yeah.
Perfect. Adnan, I think that's a nice segue to you, for another additional kind of real-world case study. Layarat, Tengkulo, very exciting discoveries. Can you tell us a bit more and kind of what role partnership with the government is playing in moving those forward?
Bottom line is, without the government support, we will not be able really to deliver the project, at the base and the accelerations that we are currently pursuing, right? The government, they showed us a support. I mean, we discovered Tengkulo in 2024, and in a few months, inshallah, we will announce FID, and this is a very remarkable milestone in a very accelerated manner. Also, if you compare this, with any other deep water project, and we are talking here about Andaman area, it has some limitations when it comes to infrastructure. So we are very proud of what we have achieved. But again, this, couldn't be achieved without the support that we are receiving from the government. So the government support is very fundamental. And also the other side, I think, is investment in the infrastructure is very fundamental. So we can accelerate from our end and so, but if there is no infrastructure development with the at the right pace, it's going to be very challenging really to bring the projects on time and deliver the sustainability or the security target that the government is aiming. But we are very happy with the current collaborations with our partners, stakeholders, and also with the government support provided in the Andaman. As I said, Andaman is a unique. It's a very important. It will not only help the region here in Indonesia, but also we have a target that Andaman might help the security of the entire Southeast Asia at some point. So we have a very ambitious plan for sure.
Thank you very much for that. So we are getting close to the end of our time. I'm going to do a bit of a combined question, I guess, for Junseong and Daniel. You've both touched on how important collaboration is in advancing emerging technologies like CCUS. I'd love to kind of come back to each of you in terms of what are the most important levers we could be looking at for scaling up CCUS industry right now. So Junseong, we'll start with you, please.
A clear and consistent policy framework is very, very important, because CCUS, like emerging industry and emerging market, it requires a lot of money. So for the industry people and for investors, long-term policy direction and predictability are critical for them to decide and to make large-scale investments. So clear, consistent policy framework.
Perfect. Daniel, please, what would you add?
I would echo that, but I think also alongside a roadmap that gives clarity on funding envelope So fundamentally, these are very expensive projects often. Now, of course, there are some projects that can be made to work economically more easily than others, and Tangguh is a great example because we're able to build on infrastructure that's already there and it's incremental. So I think there's some low-hanging fruit that you can target, but fundamentally to actually scale up the technology to the hard-to-abate sectors, to heavy industry, it needs government roadmaps that are really clear. And then it needs those governments to stick to those roadmaps alongside the policy, because if they don't, and what happens is, you build up a huge capability and you're ready to go with a project, and then you kind of have to scale it back down, and that's not healthy for the industry. So I think it's this predictability alongside the maturing of the policy development as well.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Thank you very much, all of our distinguished panelists. I think we've woven together from some quite diverse perspectives a really nice story today. There's quite aligned interest in advancing energy security and energy transition in parallel. These are interconnected goals. But to do this, partnership is more important than ever. It's how we overcome implementation gaps, funding challenges. It's how we get clarity on sequencing that enables us then to get the investment allocation required, to get the investor buy-in, to get the projects on the ground, which get us to the resiliency. So thank you very much today for the time, everyone, exploring this very important topic. Really appreciate it. And thank you very much for our audience for your attention in this bit of a marathon of a session. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Russell, moderator, and all our distinguished speakers for the valuable perspectives shared this afternoon. Kindly remain on stage as we would like to proceed with the token of appreciation and photo session. We are pleased to have the IPA board representative, Mr. Kenji Hasegawa, and Bapak Mirko to come on stage and present the mementos to our distinguished speakers and moderators. Ladies and gentlemen, this session has truly highlighted the complex balancing act we face in today's global landscape. We must courageously push forward with clean energy investments while ensuring our current energy supply remains secure and affordable for all. Please remain on stage for the photo session together. Okay, are you ready? In 3, 2, 1. Once again, in 3, 2, 1. Thank you. Another warm round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Perfect. Thank you very much. You may now return to your seat. Terima kasih. Bapak dan Ibu, kami persilahkan untuk dapat kembali ke tempat. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your active participation and engagement throughout this session. You may also enjoy the coffee and tea service available in this hall while networking with fellow delegates and participants. Perhaps this is also a good moment to connect with someone new, exchange ideas, or continue the discussion from today's session. Ladies and gentlemen, our next program will continue shortly with Plenary Session 3, Indonesia in Regional Energy Investment, Where will the next dollar go? So once again, please remain seated as we will begin our next session shortly. Thank you.